Super Rugby Trans-Tasman is here, folks. Kiwi and Aussie teams back in action against each other. It's semi-reminiscent of the Super Rugby of old. It's been quite some time since we've seen this kind of game being played, pretty much over a year. Early 2020 was the last time we saw these kind of games. So it's a welcome change, I would say. It's going to be an interesting competition just because if you haven't seen the fixtures list, there's another video on it. But basically, the New Zealand teams face the 5 Aussie teams week after week after week. It's 5 in a row, and vice versa for the Aussie teams against the Kiwi teams. So, yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see where these teams are at based on what we've seen. In New Zealand, all the teams can kind of beat each other. Even the Hurricanes, who were 2 from 6 and finished last, still on their day were able to push the Crusaders right to the wire, who end up finishing champions. In AU, you would say the Brumbies and the Reds looked quite good, maybe a cut above the rest, but then again, the Force was still able to get one over the Reds. The Waratahs did look off the pace, but even they had their moments, so yeah, it's really hard to know because they've been playing in isolation, just where these teams are at. But anyway, we'll have a look. We'll go through some of these lineups, the odds, and you guys can let me know your thoughts on how they might go. If you think you know how they're going to go, I've created a Super Brew pool, which is a prediction game. It's free. You can play on your phone. You can play on your PC. It doesn't matter. We've got a pool going. You can join in, say who you think is going to win and by how much, and then yeah, we'll see how things go. It's a free game, not promoted by them. Just it's a fun game to play to see who's got the best kind of predictions. I managed to win the pool for the 6 nations, but with the Super Rugby competitions, I've been doing significantly worse. Anyway, the first game is the Highlanders and the Reds. It's an interesting one because it's the Highlanders who finished towards the bottom end of the Super Rugby Aotearoa table. They were 4th with a 3-5 record. The Reds were 7-1 and finished champions. Now remember, the Highlanders coach Tony Brown has gone back to Japan for this competition because he's got to go help out with the Japanese national team. So he is not in charge of the Highlanders for this competition. Whether that makes any difference kind of remains to be seen. The Reds, we will see in their lineup, have made a few changes, I guess, because they've got a fairly short turnaround after that AU final last week. For the Highlanders, it's Johnston, Dixon, and Tokwalahi is a pretty familiar front row. Good news that Paddy Parkinson is back in the locks because he's a big old unit. He's had a wee bit of trouble staying fit, but now that he's fit, that's definitely good news. And Josh Dixon, from me looking at the numbers from Super Rugby Aotearoa to see kind of who was one of the top performers, he was definitely up there for the season. Renton, Harmon, and Jimeno are the back row. There's no Shannon Frizzell. He is suspended after an off-the-field thing, which I haven't read too much into, but not a good look from the headlines anyway. But again, no comment there because I haven't looked into it. Jimeno's, he got like the Super Rugby Rookie of the season and certainly had some really good numbers in his position as well. Good tackles. Tackle completion rate's not the best, but his turnovers are good. He gets through a fair bit of work and his ball carrying is good, so good all-round game from him. Aaron Smith and Mitch Hunt, the 19 combo, so Mitch Hunt still preferred to Josh Ioane. They got Scott Gregory and Michael Collins in the midfield, which is not the flashiest midfield, but certainly pretty workmanlike, and they get through the business. Nareki is on the left wing. Sio Tompkinson, who's usually a midfielder, is out into the right wing, and Sam Gilbert is at fullback. Josh Ioane is out with this one with a leg injury, so that's why he's neither at fullback nor at number 10. Coltman, Hamilton, Honeck, Bryn Evans, Lynchus, all these guys are on the bench for the Highlanders. Now for the Reds, as I mentioned, they have had a short turnaround, so they've made a few changes. Xander gets a start at loosehead. Paingamosa and Fotuaika make up the rest of the front row. Ryan Smith and Angus Blythe are the second row, so good to see Angus Blythe's back. Scott Young's at 6. Liam Wright's at 7. Good to see him get a start after riding the pine in the final. And Udu gets a start at number 8 as well, so it's a fair bit of rotation. Interesting, Kalani Thomas, he's your man for number 9. That's his starting debut for the Reds. And James O'Connor's at 10, so he's one of the players of the tournament, if not the player of the tournament for Super Rugby AU. Stewart and Fluke are the 12-13 combo. It looks like Paisami is still not ready to go. Stewart, despite not being the biggest guy, gets through a lot of work defensively. Campbell's on the left wing. Dalgunu's back to start on the right wing. It's interesting he doesn't start more because in terms of the ball carrying numbers, he is one of the most devastating guys in AU. And Hegarty is there at fullback. Some of the more familiar guys who've kind of carried the Reds through that total winning season are on the bench. The likes of Taniela Tupo, Salakai Loto, McCrate, all those guys are on the bench, and look out for Vunivalu, who is there as well. But yeah, I would imagine there's a fair bit of wanting to rotate some of the guys who've been, slogging it out the whole AU season for the Reds, despite the fact that they had a bye before the final. It is a relatively short turnaround for them to play on a Friday. The bookies over here in New Zealand have got the Highlanders by 10, and Rugby Forecast Algorithm's got the Highlanders by 4. So the Reds, champions, are underdogs in this one. They're away from home. Much changed lineup. We will have to see how they go. The second game is the Waratahs and the Hurricanes. Both of these sides finished 5th, but kind of with different manners to the way it happened. As I mentioned, the Hurricanes actually pushed some of the teams pretty hard in their losses. Remember, they've struggled a wee bit with 9-10, not having experienced guys in either position. The Waratahs have just been beaten every single game, and sometimes when you think it looks better, then it gets a whole lot worse. So it still remains to be seen how they're going to go. I obviously want them to do better than they've been doing, because nobody wants to go winless for an extended period. They are at home. They are against the bottom New Zealand team, so maybe this is a good chance for them. But anyway, Bell, Porecki, and Harry Johnson-Holmes, the front row. It's been pretty familiar with most of those guys. Angus Bell, in terms of props, has got pretty good ball-carrying numbers. Hugh Sinclair and Max Douglas is the second row. Swinton, Gamble, and Harris are the back row. Interestingly, Tizano has dropped to the bench, and that guy is a tackling machine. But the coaches have maybe been a little bit critical of him falling off the pace towards the end of games. So maybe those tackles that he makes at the start are a bit costly, but Swinton's offensive numbers have been pretty decent, and he's a good guy for getting into opposition heads. So him against Dan Coles could be an interesting one to watch. Maybe some sparks will fly. Gordon's captain, he's at 9. He's just signed a contract extension with the Tars as well, so good news. Interestingly, Donaldson is preferred to Will Harrison, who's back fit. Remember, Donaldson was this guy called in from club rugby, and he looked the business when he started, so he's still got the number 10 jersey on his back. Foketi and Parise are the midfielders. Foketi's numbers in Super Rugby were really good across the board. Parise is devastating ball in hand, but a really poor defender. So it's kind of a flip of a coin as to whether you say that's worthwhile or whether he needs to improve to play at this level. No one needs to Wase, Newsom, and Maddox are the back 3. Maddox is another guy who's usually really good going forward. Struggles a wee bit defensively. Moeroa's on the bench, Faulkner, Breen, Grant, and so on. For the Hurricanes, Numia, Coles, and Fidel as the front row. Good to see Fidel getting a start. He's not had a heck of a lot of those. Blackwell and Wakaliaweda as the second row. Blackwell, some people don't like him, but in terms of his ball handling numbers, carrying, he's a pretty decent for a second rower. Princeps 6, Karifi 7, and Flanders 8. Remember, Karifi's filling in for Adi Savia, who is out with a long-term injury. Karifi's tackling numbers are really good. Really good, and he's pretty useful to break down as well. Discipline has been on the improve, as I've mentioned multiple times throughout the season. If you guys haven't been following Aotearoa, yeah, he's been improving one area of his game that he's traditionally struggled with, which is the amount of penalties he gives away. Campbell and Ruben Love are your 19 combo. Like I mentioned, not the most experienced combo, but I mean Donaldson for the Tars is also pretty fresh. Umanga Jensen and Proctor is a youthful midfield as well, so maybe Parise can cause some havoc there, but neither of those young guys for the Canes are slouches. Rayasi's been one of the most devastating ball carriers in Aotearoa as well, so I look forward to seeing him up against Newsom. Julian Savia's on the right wing, and Geordie Barrett with that big old boot of his is at 15. Almua's on the bench. Look for him to add some impact. Talmatene, Braden Yose, who was really good, scored a try. He's really quick for a Lucy, and so on. So, yeah, it's predicted to be a pretty long day at the office for the Tars, to be honest. If you look at the bookies, they have got the Hurricanes by 23 points. Rugby Forecast algorithm predicts things to be a wee bit closer for that one, with the Hurricanes by 6. So, yeah, I'm just happy to have Super Rugby Trans-Tasman back. I am fascinated to see how these teams go up against each other, because it is really hard to judge the two competitions separately. It's only when they get to match up that you see where the teams really at. Are you backing the two Kiwi teams to get the job done? Do you think the Reds can be a threat, a much changed Reds side away from home, or do you think the Waratahs can finally turn it around at home as well? It should be a bit of fun. As I said, sign up for the Super Rugby pool if you're keen to show us your predictions. Some of the usernames in that pool are pretty glorious as well. If you got this far through the video, do drop it a like. That always helps. And yeah, I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later. Bye.